Okay, I have 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call to order. We'll start with roll call. Lauren, we'll start with Renee. How's that?
I don't know if she's aware that.
Oh, Renee Hansen is joining us via Zoom.
There, now you can talk.
I'm here. I've been here for about a half hour, whatever it is. About a half hour.
All right. Lauren Tice Miller.
Tim Hallisey,
Erica Price.
Rocky Business.
Rosa Cavazos.
Eric Deecher.
All right, welcome. Next we need,
Sarah is on here as well.
and Sarah Hoyer is also present on Zoom. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
second.
Motion by Rocky, second by Eric. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4,
Renee's
5,
hand is up.
6-0. And Jason is joining us. Next, we'll move on to discussion items.
Yes, the motion was by Eric and the second was by Rocky.
Thank
Other
you,
way
Lauren.
around.
Or other way around.
Other way around.
Sorry.
Next, we'll move on to discussion items, board goals. Mr. Halsey, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So each year, we establish board goals. And the goals that the board identifies as critical to our operations and laying the groundwork, then filter throughout the organization. Your goals filter down to the leadership team, then it filters down to the buildings. And those become part of our discussions, part of our evaluations that we work out throughout the course of the year. We also, as we sit down and talk about those, we also want to connect those not only to the yearly goal, but also look down the road. Short-term goals, not just this year, but 1 to 3 years, but then also on long-term needs that the district will have as we move forward. So those are really good discussions, really fruitful ones, because as we sit down and work with students and the leadership team throughout, we are constantly looking at and anticipating what our needs will be down the road, and then tying those in. So these are really fruitful kind of conversations. It helps us with the prioritization of resources, time, manpower, things like that we identify as important to our mission. So these are really fruitful discussions. The board has always done a nice job of selecting good goals that are broad in nature, that impact everything from instruction to working conditions, to support services for students, to facility needs, and have done a nice job looking out for the long-term interest of both people and the district as far as facilities go. So that will continue, and we'll do a good job of managing those and working towards those goals and tracking our progress.
Okay, we can start with goal number 1. All district educators will adopt innovative and rigorous instructional strategies. Nope, it's not. I'll start over. All district educators will adopt innovative and rigorous instructional strategies to meet student learning needs to ensure students will graduate college and career ready. How do we feel about the wording and keeping that goal? Any thoughts? If there's anyone out here listening, normally we have a work session that's a little less formal, so forgive us.
Is that possible to get our goals put up on there? No?
I won't be able to pull that up.
Give that one here. I have this one.
Thank you.
So district leadership team, their goal areas are responsive culture and relevance. So keep that in mind when we're having these discussions, if we need to tweak anything to support district leadership's goals too.
Well, one of the things that I did leading up to this meeting was kind of go out and see some ideas in what would be considered to be, successful ideas for goals. And the one that the points and the bullets that they really emphasized on was talking about, measurable student achievements, dealing with the facilities, the community and parental engagement, dealing with technology, and highly qualified staff, and fiscal management and responsibility. And quite honestly, I thought the last few years, we really kind of hammered away on our goals to kind of bring it in, to really kind of focus on, as I see, the points that are considered to be good goals. So I can honestly say that if we made no changes to the goals that we have, I would be fine. But I'm also open to suggestions, because I think that this has opened up some really good discussion and some tweaking as we've moved forward with it, so.
As I look at the current goals that the board worked with from last year, they're well-written and conceived, and written in a way that gives us broad leeway to make changes that come up based on need. And so, like goal number 1, all district educators will adopt innovative and rigorous instructional strategies to meet student learning needs and ensure students will graduate college and career ready. That is a broad goal that gives us a lot of opportunity to address needs that come up at the building level, at the department level, and most importantly at the student level that come up. It also ties in very nicely with our long history of a really solid, top-notch professional development program that we have, and we've invested a lot of time and resources in that. And that really is a huge part of the engine that drives the whole ship. And so I would agree, Eric, that we've done a nice job of writing these in a way that allow us to do a lot of things and focus on what's important and prioritize in the district.
I mean, I also agree that I don't think our goals need a lot of changing. I'd like us to focus a little more on that 2-year, 5-year, 10-year.
I agree with that.
And I know we're not going to solve all of the district's problems tonight, but it would be nice to start a conversation on what we want those things to look like. Like we have the bond coming up, and we've done the building, the energy, help me out, the
Energy assessment.
the energy and building assessment. And so we have that information, which we needed. And then it'd also be nice if we can start collecting some information on like projected growth and any new neighborhoods, those big pieces of land that are going for sale that, anyone, maybe the county knows what the plans are for those tracts of land and what that looks like for Barrington, who's really full, and, well, they're all really pretty full. But, what that looks like for us as far as the future goes. And maybe, dreaming big, a little bit big, but still reasonable, and what that looks like later on. So it'd be nice to have finally have some of these conversations about our long-term goals instead of just COVID. So.
No, that's a good point. When we look longer term, we are going to have some decisions to make. The buildings are tight. We're out of program space in many areas. We have lots of requests to come to the district, but we can't accept everybody because we have limitations on space, on facilities, on staffing, on several things like that. The district did a great job adding to the support services of students this year with some of the mitigation money that we had. It has been a struggle to find physical placement and to work on that. And so we have that. And it is a nice problem to have in that so many people want to come and have their children educated here. That's a great compliment. But we have limits, and we are approaching those very rapidly. So having longer-term conversations over the next 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 years about the things that will start to impact us long-term. Leading into that next bond issue will be important. That next bond issue will really pave the groundwork for what we're able to do with students, really pushing up to 2040, 2050, long range. That's a significant investment that this community will be making a decision on over the next 4 or 5 years. Eric is exactly right. We're going to have to do a comprehensive needs assessment of what we think is going to be. Part of that's going to be a traffic study. We have so much new growth and so many houses being built. It's very difficult sometimes. We don't have shoulders on most of our roads. It makes it a little tight. We're going to have to look at some of those growth pieces of that. So a traffic study will be part of that. Projections of population growth, where those will occur at, where we anticipate that, how that will impact our various buildings and attendance centers will be all part of that conversation that we'll want to do. We'll also have to look at some of our programs. Right now, we have facilities out at Forbes Field. Will we be able to better serve students if that facility is part of our campus setting or structure in some way? That is something that we'll have to think about. That'll be part of that discussion. And so there's really a lot of groundwork that we can do over especially the next 3 years so that we have a really good idea of putting those needs together and what those things might look like when we really start to get down to having to make some really tough decisions and having those good conversations with our community about where we want to go over the next 10 to 15 years. So all those things will play in. The goals that the board has completely allow us to have those conversations, force us to think about those, because we're having those conversations now as we go out and we finding places in the buildings to serve students. We're talking about what some of those needs are. We have those on a weekly basis already. So your building leadership teams are very well aware of that, what their limitations are, and also have a pretty good idea of what the needs moving forward, especially over the next 5 to 10 years, will be. These other longer term things will really help us think and put together a little bit longer term on top of that. But all those things that we can do over the next, not just this year, but the next year after that. So the next 2 years, I think, will be a lot of information gathering that'll help us really start to focus and narrow in on some of the things that we might identify as priorities and critical as we move forward and think about future facility needs.
Well, I know before with the previous bond, we had HDK that was involved and very much involved in coming up with the alternative, kind of the wants and the needs of the district. And I think they did an excellent job. It helped those of us on the board at the time being able to see those points that you're talking about exactly. And I mean, some of the things were, well, all the items that were addressed at that last bond were the needs. I mean, it wasn't really the wants, it was really, we addressed all the needs.
Yep.
And I think that's what we'll continue to do, but I think some of the wants then become needs. Talking about the off-campus alternative school that, currently utilizing, and is it really a want or is it a need? And I agree, I think it's a need to bring that type of a opportunity onto the campus. I think in the long run, it'd be a cost savings for us, but that type of thing, I think that's the discussion that
Yep.
we'll have as we move forward, so, anyway.
So do we need to formalize that as a short-term goal for this school year, that we're going to do a long-term needs assessment and call that out? Or are you saying that's inclusive of the existing goals that we have here?
I think it's implicit in the goals that you already have, Rocky. It's just making that and formalizing that as part of our conversation. As we start to talk about those, as we start to think about that, as we start narrowing down on that, but just start to have those. Some of those will be formal things, requesting a traffic study, the population study. Those will you guys will have board action on those items, and so you guys will be bringing those up, and we'll be moving forward as we start to look at that. The more informal pieces, informal conversations, architects, engineers that we have on a normal basis within a year anyway. Those will naturally happen. So I don't think, Rocky, to get to your question, I don't think we have to formally write that into the goal. I think it's just implicit in that, and we all know that's the direction that we're going to have to look at over the next 4 to 5 years.
So when should we really start that? I mean, when do we need to start? When's the bond up? 2025? I'm sorry? When is the bond up? Is it 25 or 27? I mean, it's a little ways out. It's
about
close enough
5
we need
years
to
out,
start
yeah.
really
Yeah, you know,
getting our ducks in a row?
Yes, we have to
Right.
really start putting some thought to that and identifying what we think will be priorities with that. and then also what the possibilities would be. So, yeah, we're into that 3-year, 4-year range where we really want to start gathering some information, and the decisions that we make now, make sure that they align with what may be a possibility then. Yeah, we're there.
Well, at the Foundation Golf Tournament, being at the station that I was at all day long, everybody came through, and it's Elizabeth with HTK. Had a conversation with her and just kind of said, do you remember the process we did? She, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so definitely, I kind of planted the seed that,
Sure.
what it would take for us to move forward with that, and definitely is interested in working with us to try to make that happen.
So it sounds like in our 1 to 3 year plans, our short-term goal, we need to hire a company to help us with that, to lead us down the right path, or is it something that we just do? I mean, I've never been a part of this process.
Yeah, eventually when we select an architecture firm, that will be part of that
To help-
formalized process.
Okay,
There will be some information gathering pieces that we'll want to do before then.
prior to that, okay.
Like the ones that we're talking about.
So
the
that wouldn't
traffic
be
piece, yeah.
part of HTK. These other things that you mentioned are things we will initiate ourselves.
Yeah, we will do these beforehand, start gathering that.
Other
But then
sources, yeah.
having conversations with them along the way.
Okay.
If that is the firm that the board chooses to go with.
Right, but like with the traffic study, that information is
Correct.
attainable through the county. They
Yes.
can get us
Yeah.
that information.
And so there'll be some things like that. So
Right.
it'll be a coordination piece, but, yeah.
When was the last time we did a population study? It was about 8 years ago, wasn't it?
Well, we did the population study when we did the redistricting of the schools.
Was in-
About 8 years ago.
Yeah, that was in 2014.
It was in 2013, 14, it was
14.
2014, exactly when we actually made the decision on that. You're exactly right. So, yeah, February of 14.
Yep.
So that's, the study itself was done, at the end of 13, but carried on through that information that we shared with the district and kind of pulled it all together and made the decisions. But, yeah, that's the time frame.
And they said that information is good for 5 years, if I remember right, something like that.
I think it was, I think the expectation was it was other side.
There you go.
Sorry about that.
I thought it was longer than 5, but you could be right.
Anyway, long story short, we're due for another one anyway.
Yeah. Yes, because you look at I thought it was incredibly effective in the job that we did. It balanced it. But we knew that it would quickly approach, that would be bulging at the seams again, so see what other options are there. I mean, you can only shuffle the cards so many times when you have to build a new house. I mean, you have to do something.
It's a good challenge to have, and again, it's a
It
great
is.
sign that people want to be here. It is, as we try and balance that, we watch those we watch those enrollment numbers very close, trying to balance that out. I mean, because we have lots of requests of, my daycare provider's here, I would like to go to this school.
Yeah.
I can't put you into that classroom because the numbers are too high there.
But we could put that second grader in this school, that would.
So it does present some challenges, but we're starting to get that everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just part of it that we'll have to look, and we'll eventually have to make some decisions based on that, yeah.
So like I said before, this is normally a little more of an informal process.
Sure,
So-
yeah.
But, so how should we start? I'm still feeling like we're just kind of, it feels disorganized to me. So what do we need to do? How do we start setting those goals for, I don't want to call
The
them
long term,
hard
midterm,
goals, but,
long-term.
Sure, well,
so we're
Yeah,
talking
we need
about
to-
doing this, but how do you,
You need a strategic planning session where we can actually set more
Right, okay.
long-term goals and discuss the vision for the district.
okay,
So there needs to be some kind of actual facilitated discussion to
that's what I'm
create
feeling.
to create the strategic plan.
and you're going to have a lot of conversations that will feed into that. like, so this fall, one of the big things that we'll do is our cap outlay project. As we sit down and really start to identify what some of the building needs are, and we start to look at and start to put to work some of our capital specifically for those things. That feeds directly into a broader needs assessment like Lauren's talking about. So we'll have lots of good information about that. And then it's us coming to you and saying, let's go ahead and start to move forward. Let's look at the traffic study as we have that. As we all struggle with drop off and pick up and things like that as parents. I mean, that takes some patience as we all work through that. Some of the transportation struggles we're all starting to get just as our population begins to grow and we just have more people on limited roads and things like that. So that's all part of that too. That'll feed into a larger plan once we really start to make decisions. We'll have some really good information about that, about what our needs are, what our projections are. And as we start to sit down and really start to identify, these are really the critical pieces that we'll really want to put together with a long-term facility plan. So, and we have some other short terms, like our infrastructure update, the work that we need to have done behind walls, above ceilings, those kind of things. Our buildings are so well taken care of. When you walk down the hall, you forget they're 50 years old. But some of the work behind the scenes, behind some of those, needs to be done just to keep those updated. We'll continue to take care of buildings. We're going to get 75, 100 years out of them, but we will have to update some of the infrastructure behind the walls and above ceilings just to make sure it keeps working and functioning to handle the load of people in there every day. So we'll have some of that work too, and we've already done some of that. And so we have a pretty good idea of what that scope of work will be in 5 years when we're able to get to that. The other parts on alternative education, looking at that, how do we serve students, that need changes too. That need has continually grown slowly, but it has grown from year to year. That's also part of the monthly conversations that we have as a leadership team. How do we serve students? How do we serve them best? How do we serve some of our students that we really can't meet their needs in the traditional classroom setting? So those are part of that too. So a lot of that will feed in, and so it's not something that we have to have right now, but it's something that we want to grow over the next 3 years so that we really have a lot of good information, like I said, when we get to that point where we really want to sit down and have that conversation of here's what we really need in the next bond issue. So we should have a good idea by then, but we can add those over the next 2 to 3 years very easily.
So are we going forward with the 2020, 2021 goals for 21, 22? Or are we going to discuss anything more about these goals?
We can go through them one by one. We did the first one, or I read the first one, and I think we're pretty happy with the first one. I feel like we're bouncing around a little bit, but I'll move on to I'll read number 2 for anyone who's just listening. All district personnel will promote a culture of inclusion and acceptance and proactively address the social emotional needs of students and staff so they will thrive in a constantly changing global society. So that's our number 2. Does anyone have any thoughts or want to make any changes to that? I feel like we had a whole year where we didn't get to, see those in action as well.
We had an entire year where we were watching these things from a completely different perspective.
Very true. Very true.
Well, and if you remember, we set these goals just as the school year last year was starting. And so we hadn't experienced really the peak of last year's pandemic.
Right.
And so these were some of these things are at the forefront of our minds, that we wanted to make sure that even with the alternate arrangements we had to make, that we were still being innovative and increasing rigor, and we still wanted there to be the social and emotional aspect of it. So all of these, we added a touch of difference to it to accommodate what we were thinking we were about to experience. And then they all kind of got set on the back burner while we just navigated last year. And so I'm fine with them all staying as they are. I think they still meet what our goals are, as soon, you know, and I think there's more work being done on them being chipped away in the background than we may be aware of, because as a board, we have been spending more of our time discussing how are we going to remedy, you know, COVID and things like that. So work is being done on the goals. It's just not as much at the forefront of our conversations because we've been sidetracked with all of the other stuff. So I still like them and think they capture really where we all see fit for the district.
Well, and I think that we, like with goal number 2, we talked about proactively addressing the social emotional needs of students and us hiring that dean of students to help be the support person. So I think that we did a really good job of still implementing our goals this past year, even though we were in and out at times. The one thing that I have heard from some parents of some of the younger students is the amount of time that their pre-K or kindergarten through second graders are spending on their iPads. And I know that we talk about in goal number 3, all learning environments and activities will adhere to appropriate health and safety guidelines to promote and maximize the safety, security, and well-being of attendees. I didn't know if a couple of things on this one, and I know that technology is the future and that our students need to have some technology, but when parents have addressed being on their iPads during lunch instead of having a conversation with the student that's next to them and having a movie playing or something. And so they felt, you know, some parents have felt like their child has spent a lot of time on the iPad, and we know they all did, but making sure that it's not just for recreation, but that it's also for school, and thinking about our last board meeting, how we talked about being creative, about getting students outside so that they can take their mask off, and being able to spread out if they're in the auditorium and things like that. And I didn't know what everybody else was feeling, if anybody else heard that from parents, and I wouldn't even know how to incorporate anything, you know, like creatively addressing, you know, needs outside of the classroom or in the environment, because we still talk about safety and all learning in the environments, you know, and so I think we're addressing it, but I feel like maybe in my mind we're still kind of missing that piece if we have parents that are concerned about their children spending, you know, 8 hours or 7 hours on their iPad. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's just what I've heard from parents at the elementary school.
Well, I hope that that's not happening.
I don't think it is.
But-
To be honest with you, especially at that age group, I mean, like the second graders and all that age group, when they're at lunch, they don't take any of their technology with them. It's all, they're in the,
So I would say with that concern, definitely push that down to that building level and see just how the principal, what do you think?
I think the
Double check
teachers,
that,
I think the
make sure.
teachers and the principals have a good handle on it.
Okay.
At the end of the day, technology is just a tool. It's a tool that can help teachers be more efficient instructors, especially as we drill down to the individual ability levels of students and teach to their level and their need. It helps us be more efficient instructors, and then it helps students and apply knowledge and skills at a deeper level. It's not a substitute for really good teacher instruction. It's not. It's just a tool. And so it'll never replace that. It'll never be as effective as that. It's just we use it to do certain things, and then we move back. And because the most important part is that guided instruction that teachers do, that relationship building, and the peer interaction that students have with each other. Those are always key. Technology can't get in the way of that. It just has to help facilitate those and make it better. And that's really the goal. We certainly don't want to spend too much time on it. And again, I think they do a good job finding that balance on that. just from what I've seen, honestly, in my being out in the buildings and stuff, there's been more interaction with kids. I haven't seen them doing a whole lot of quiet
That's
times
good.
on technology. So a lot more interaction and hands-on stuff, so.
Sorry, I just felt like I had to bring that up because I had heard it from a number of parents
Yeah, I
and
think it's good to
Definitely
bring it up
wanna-
and discuss it, absolutely.
so,
I would ask them to definitely take their concern to the building and just make sure that, you know,
well, and last year they were eating lunch in their classroom.
yeah, that's,
And so, I mean, so I know there were some
Yeah.
circumstances, but I just wanted to address that so we could have the conversation about it. But like I said, I feel like we talk about it in here and we're talking about safety and, appropriate health and safety guidelines. And so I feel like it's partially addressed. And I'll just, continue to let parents know to visit with their teachers and, school principals.
you also brought up a topic that I thought, you said that you thought maybe we could add something about outside of school. And I be very careful. I want to really badly, but I think as a school district, we have to be really careful about where our boundaries are. And try, even though less screen time is better, I don't know, or, I don't know how we would put that in there and not be overstepping our bounds, I guess, about.
We can control things in our environment,
within
but
the
outside of that,
buildings.
we can't.
But
I think she was meaning
I-
actually physically taking classes outside.
Yeah, that's what
And not relying on screens to
Okay,
Right.
to
'cause I was like, I'm not sure I
occupy the
can
children.
incorporate
I think
it.
she means creatively using outdoor space.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Like,
I misunderstood.
Physically outside, not,
I was like,
Because I'm like,
yeah,
we
not
can't be
outside of school
telling- we
grounds.
can't
I didn't know if you
tell
could see my eyes.
parents
I
what
was
we're
like,
supposed
I
to be
don't
doing
know what
outside
you're
of school.
talking about.
Yeah.
I
But
was looking like,
I'm like, what am I
Yeah.
missing here? But yeah, no.
Yeah, because that's what we talked about at the last
Yes.
meeting, is them getting creative
Okay.
and being able to use outdoor space.
Yes.
Which I would say would fall under the innovative instructional strategies.
Yes.
If we could have more outdoor classroom space, that would be amazing.
Yes.
And that kind of stuff. And so that our teachers do have more flexibility with being able to take our
I heard
students
what Erica
outside.
heard.
Oh,
I was on track with her, and I'm thinking,
yeah. I was like, I don't.
I was like, well, no, you're right, we can't regulate screen time outside of.
No, I was like, I didn't know where you were going with that. And I'm like, that's why my face was really confused. I'm like, what is she talking about?
that was, I'm
It's
totally.
Sorry.
77 degrees outside, let's go.
Because I know the
Let's
middle
play
school
some
ha-
grass or something like
I know the
Yeah.
middle school has done a good job of taking their kids outside.
Yeah, I mean, they
Well-
have the gardening
Yes.
stuff
Yeah,
and
so
all
kudos
of
to them,
that.
and I'm sure, I have been, my head's been at work, so I know, I'm sure, I know our buildings are doing.
Yeah,
that
that's
stuff too,
what I
so.
was encouraged.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you.
Well, I was gonna say, if it's any consolation, my kindergartner just asked me the other day, why haven't I gotten an iPad yet? So like, she was under the assumption that day one, she'd be getting an iPad and had been looking forward to that. And I was like, I don't think that's happening. So she's very disappointed she doesn't have one.
I'm 42 and I just finally got a work phone, so. Good luck. But anyway.
Thank you for clarifying
sorry.
that, because
Yeah,
maybe
thank you.
other
Clarifying
people
that.
thought it was something else too,
Like,
so
yeah, that's all
I
right.
apologize.
Yeah, nope, sorry about that. The only other thing I want to bring up is we talked about KISA goals, and you shared those.
Yeah.
And I think those still fit in, I think our goals still fit, that goal area number 1, responsive culture, component 3, district climate and culture, and social engagement, and then relevance with instructional strategies. So I think that all still fits.
Yeah, that fits.
doesn't-
Yeah,
it's not a
and the district was asked to be one of the districts that is going to pilot the new KISA process. We're going to be involved with the development of that, and that says a lot about the district and the reputation that we have for strong PD, strong instruction, those types of things. So we'll have a hand in helping shape the next phase of that, what that looks like. And so we'll actually start those meetings next month. So we'll be a part of that. And like Erica said, those the ones that were identified by the buildings as important will fit right into our goals just fine. we won't have to change a single thing, so.
And it's important, I kind of like that we're actually, I don't know how many viewers we have, but it is, I think this is one of those processes that a lot of parents just don't know that the district goes through. And so, you know, there's building leadership teams, and that feeds into the district leadership team, and then that feeds into the board goals, and it's all connected, even down to where your student is writing their own personal goals, educational goals. And then that, you know, then the teams share that, and then it just, so these goals really are important, and they're important to look at annually. And I'm glad that we're having this discussion, especially about our long-term goals, or even our short-term, our short long-term goals and our really long-term goals. And I'm glad Lauren mentioned that we do need to have a strategic planning session. I think Sue mentioned that a while back, but just where do you even start with that whole process? And so it's nice to talk about it. And if does anyone else have any, I don't know if we should talk about great big dreams, but,
Well, I think it'd be helpful if we were to pull out what we used last time and actually see what was presented to the board and what were some of those items and what was selected, what wasn't selected. At least it'd give everyone an opportunity to see what we did then. And because I know that's available. I know, in fact, I think I have a hard copy somewhere. But I know that we've got other electronic copies going back, because that would have been, when was that? That was like in 2015.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, Renee?
Before
Renee?
Yeah, is Eric saying we should look at the strategic planning that we did in 2014?
Yes.
And kind of assess how we did on following those goals?
Exactly, and we could look at what those goals were and what they presented as to the items that were the ones
I
that
think
needed.
that would be a perfect place to start. And then move forward from there based on the things that have happened since that time.
Right. And
Would that
then
have been 2014, or would that have been when the last bond issue was?
the bond issue, is when the bond issue.
So that'd have been like, what,
12?
12? 11
So
or
it
12?
was 12.
Wow.
Because then the project started being constructed in,
Yeah, because then the
14.
auditorium was built out of the bond issue.
it was, and that was completed in 15, I believe, March of 15.
Yep.
And so that came out of, because it was like the year we did the bond, and then the next year we did the redistricting.
Yep.
So, which I'd take those over
Over
pandemic any
COVID?
day. So it was, but I think a very good tool to at least start with and see what was involved with it at that time. But yeah, I know that that's all electronic somewhere that Jeannie can find.
We can find it.
We can find it.
We
We
can
can
dig
find
that
it.
up and look at that process and,
Yeah.
it'll.
But I think Lauren's spot on that we should have a strategic planning meeting just to kind of go through that, and that'd be the base I'd at least look at, and then kind of go from there. And, you know, that as the board members did bring some of the things that they thought might be beneficial for the district, in addition to what HTK presented as well. So it was a quite collaborative.
Yeah, and then we'll have tons of conversations. with the
Absolutely.
community,
Oh, yeah.
across
Oh,
the
yeah,
board.
I mean, it was
As we
hammered and
start to get that,
rehammered.
that'll be a long process.
Well, because the
to gather
last
that
bond
information.
issue was for $17 million, if I remember correctly. And one of the numbers that kind of floated out there was like in the 30s, I mean, with some of those items that were on that. So it got whittled down quite a bit, and it was good. I mean, it was really, really beneficial, and the district benefited from it tremendously. Every building was impacted in a positive way. Every building got something. They got something out of it. So I know that was a goal for the board, you know, that everyone got something out of it. And I think we achieved that.
I mean, that would get the most people interested in, that would get the most people interested in supporting the bond issue, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I still remember the funny thing about when we're having a discussion about the auditorium and how it had failed in previous bonds. And yet when we were talking about the new bond and having the layout of each of the buildings and how that looked and what they would benefit from it, the one thing that we had to really point out to the architect was to make sure that when you had that auditorium, on that picture, that it's not blue.
Yep.
And because before on the bond, everyone saw that blue and they thought that we were building an indoor pool. It's like, no, that's an auditorium. But they just looked at the blue and they assumed it was a pool, and it's like, no. But that's kind of what, no pun intended, that's what sunk it, Not kind of a pun intended, but it's just things like that.
So moving forward from tonight, you're saying we should do the traffic study and the, like, population growth things prior to the strategic planning session?
Or those could be a part of it.
Yeah.
I think it would be part of,
It would
I'd
be
see us
part
having
of
a
it.
strategic
All of
planning.
that you
want
could
it-
pull that in.
As far as planning, so I was thinking if I'm going to get a hold of KSB and do a strategic planning session, or whomever, how is that where we start and plan that for February, or? And then
There
you
would
do
be
that
nothing
stuff?
wrong, yeah, and you could decide all the pieces that you want to incorporate
Okay.
in that.
Because they weren't involved in it. KSB was not.
Well, but you're going to establish a strategic plan that's going to start outlining the steps we need to take to be able to get to the
that.
bond process.
Okay.
Right.
So whoever does the bond process, obviously, is not KASB, but KASB will help do the facilitated discussion to outline the strategic plan.
Okay, so we would start with them as far as the strategic plan goes, or someone.
Yeah, you would,
Okay.
it's
All right.
easier to get a facilitator in to
I
help
think it's
guide that piece, yeah.
great to have a facilitator, facilitate those.
And that may have been going on behind the scenes that, I wasn't aware of, but I just know that they weren't not present in our
Right.
discussions, so.
Okay.
I mean, so if we, for example, establish a long-term goal of ours is to move the alternative program to campus, then we have to take that into consideration when we're doing the bond. And so
Right.
we have to create that part, which is what's in the strategic plan, to
And that
then
would
be
be
able
that
to
line
help.
item. yes.
Right, and to then be able to plan out what we need to put in the bond issue.
Correct.
So that we can achieve those goals.
But then have the realistic understanding, we'd have to have the architects involved as to
Oh,
be able
right.
to give us an estimate of what that's actually going to cost us.
Because this whole thing is going to take years,
Yes.
just the planning portion.
Right.
And that's why I really want to
Correct.
make sure that, we're heading that direction.
Yeah, starting now is absolutely where we need to
And we
be.
have to carve out time, non-COVID discussion, board meetings, to have it. Like, we are just going to
Just
have
like
to do that.
tonight, it'd just be another,
Right, because we are so swamped and just inundated with,
no, it's got to be a standalone
especially
meeting.
central office and administrators, they don't have time, they have not had probably a minute to think about what they want for a long-term goal, and we've got to carve out some time for that. But anyway, I thank you for that, and I think if the board agrees, I'll work on, do you think February is too late to start? It kind of gets us past, if we have new board members coming on, it gets us past, I scheduled I need to schedule a boardsmanship retreat for new board members coming on. And so that way, we'll have a little reset and go from there. Because we'll at least have one new member. So we'll do that in January, and then we could set the strategic planning in February. Does that sound okay to everybody? Any thoughts,
That is
anything?
reasonable.
Okay, what about timelines? I can also double check the, I might have it with me somewhere. The annual board agenda calendar we set up, see what stuff we talked about in February.
Right.
But I think that February seems like it'd be, we just do a lot of approving of some contracts, buses, next year's calendar, we approve all of the capital outlay purchases, so maybe that is an appropriate time to do that. Okay,
It would work.
all right,
We need to,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Renee.
can you hear me? Okay. Do we need to take some kind of motion or consensus that we are going to continue with the previous goals that we had set for our basic
Yes.
year-to-year goals?
Yes,
Can we take action on that tonight? I thought we just
Is it just? I
set them
think it is just a
tonight and then
discussion
we,
item,
and then
isn't
we
it?
approve them at our
I
next
think you're
meeting.
right.
It's not an action item for tonight,
It's not, okay. I apologize, it's not an action item. I took my agenda
but we
down.
will have to take action, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Not tonight.
Not tonight, but
You want to approve them.
we'll approve them at the next board meeting. Do you want to, but
Okay.
we're talking next regular board meeting, correct?
Yes.
Because the other agenda's
Next
already out.
regular board
Regular
meeting.
board meeting, September
And I
7th.
apologize, board, I apologize. That was totally my responsibility to tell you about Friday's meeting, and I was very concerned about Jason's Deli and forgot. There's a board meeting Friday at 4 o'clock. Special
Yes,
board
ma'am.
meeting, it should be fairly quick. We have to,
It's at your house, Jason, so thank you very
so
much.
if you
for
could get
hosting.
things ready, have a charcuterie board, that'd be
There's a
delightful.
board meeting when?
Friday at,
At 4?
at 4 PM. It's via Zoom.
Okay.
It should be fairly quick.
Should be a quick
I
meeting.
apologize,
Yeah,
it is my
be
fault.
quick. We need to approve the negotiated agreement
Yes.
and salary.
Can you let Erica know that I will have 3 contracts that she'll need to come sign?
I can be here in person for Friday.
Great.
Yep, thank you.
Sign.
So,
And then our next full board meeting isn't until the Tuesday following Labor Day, is that correct?
7th.
correct, the
Yes.
7th.
Okay.
The 7th. So, and while we're all here, the next person, if you'd like to attend the pre-board meeting,
Is if you can't
Should
be
be Rosa.
bored enough, let's do a pre-board.
we do those at 7:30 on the Wednesday prior to the meeting, so it would be September 1st. And we can just do it, we've been doing a conference call, or I think you're coming in person. So you can either come here in person, or you can do a conference call. And both have been pretty effective, really.
Yeah.
So, does anyone else have any goal topics they would like to discuss tonight?
The only thing that came to mind as we were talking about all of this, and this is like a global education thing, but what came to mind is establishing some kind of goal that helps us better communicate the success of our students. I know that it's come up in discussions I think we've even received a couple emails about how our ACT score, average scores are dropping, and that somehow is a reflection negatively on our district. And that's not the case. So there are multiple things that we look at to identify the success of our district. And I think, the initial CAN tour that Dr. Watson did really helped, I think, change the conversation about what a successful student looks like when they graduate. And I think that we'll only continue to build on that even with the second tour. But I think as a district, we could jump on that as well and talk about the different successes, and that it's not just what a student's ACT score is. And also the fact that we have more students taking the ACT. And so the law of averages is going to affect that ACT score, and it's not indicative of the direct or indirect result of our teaching in the districts. And so, we do so many amazing things. And Tiffany, you've done a great job with improving the communications for our district. So, but I think just as a community as a whole, I think we can help contribute to that message that there's more to our kids graduating than their ACT scores.
100%.
So I don't think we need to amend our district goals to reflect that in any way. I just think that if we could work more towards communicating those successes, it would benefit everybody as a whole.
Do we do a monthly, we don't do a monthly newsletter district-wide, do we? No. It'd be nice to do something. I'm not saying it, I'm not putting all the responsibility on you. That's not what I mean. It's been in my long-term list to be quite honest. Yeah. Just pushing out, hey, guess what? A few bullet points, this happened at North, this happened at South, this happened at Barrington, this happened Shez, this is going on at middle school, these are what's going on with the ACTs at the high school. Just a monthly
Well, I think it's even
quick
come
blast.
up I think at one point, and I can't remember who I've had the conversation with, but we've talked about how the elimination of the paper newsletters that got sent district-wide to all patrons, not just those enrolled in the district,
I've talked to Ms.
were
House
very
about-
beneficial in helping keep those who
Yeah.
may have had children in the district in the past and are aware of, and I remember even getting those when I was a kid, and you'd read the updates on teacher retirements and other things that have come to the district. And I know that was one of the low-hanging fruit items that got cut when budgets started getting cut, but maybe even if we explore that option as well, just so that we're getting some additional information, not to just our parents, but just the entire district as a whole.
Well, could
I
that
agree
be
with you.
section or part of the student paper? We could expand that out?
Yeah, it could be. And in fact, actually, Ed West and I think, had a conversation last year about could the journalism department actually offer like a subscription, a small price
Exactly.
subscription to be able to mail out some of the issues of the totem,
Yeah.
so that those in the district could
I
stay
think that's
in
a
But that could be a
fabulous
sec-
idea.
and
But that could
I
be a
think he was
section.
going to talk to the new journalism teacher about it, and then COVID happened, and
Yeah.
the rest is history. But yeah,
Okay, so that we.
so that
So
could be
who-
an option,
I think
and
that's- I
and it
think
would be
that's-
actually
that
a
would
really
be
great
more
way to help.
cost-effective, way more cost-effective than having a standalone newsletter.
Right.
If it could just be a section within the student
Well, and
paper.
you're applying some real-world
Yes, there's a huge benefit for the
experiences
students.
for the kids. Yeah, when you're talking about subscriptions and costs and mailing those out,
Yeah.
and things like
Well,
that.
the bad thing about having it just be the totem is the totem tends to cover the high school.
Right.
Right, but it could,
They'd have to
again, that
expand
could be
it.
something that could
If
expand to
they-
the good news of the district and what's new in the district, and it would expand, and that would give them, those students, the opportunity to go out and find out what's going on in the different buildings within our district.
Communications major,
I
would you
mean,
like
and
to head that up?
what I remember,
Like
the newsletter that used to go out many, many years ago, it only came like maybe once or twice a year. And I especially remember it coming at the end of the year because it announced all the teacher retirements. So it may have only been once a year, and it was just like a pre-sorted, everybody in the district kind of
Maybe it was once a
postal service
quarter?
They used
thing.
to hand out a calendar.
Maybe it was once a quarter?
They would mail a calendar that had a lot of information in it. And so the patrons would have that calendar that they could follow along what was happening.
There's definitely a disconnect between our patrons that don't have kids.
Yes.
And our district, and we have got to reconnect, and I've
Well, for a successful
talk to-
bond, for a
Yes.
successful bond, we
Any
gotta
of
have
Yeah,
a
we have
huge
to
connection.
reconnect with them.
Yep.
and that has been one of my goals, and
And they need a
I think it'd
reliable
just be
source of
dividing
information.
everybody, but it would be nice, and I've talked about getting all the board out in the public more and talking about these things, especially after that strategic plan comes out. I mean, it's gonna be our job to help facilitate those conversations.
Well, that's what we did. I mean, because
Yeah.
I went to, was invited to speak at homes and gatherings about what the plan was, and we did that a lot, an
And-
awful lot. It was great. Like what you're thinking. It gets the board in front,
Right,
and they get to explain to them as opposed to the rumors.
correct,
So you guys are putting a pool? No,
right.
that's an auditorium, that type of, because they didn't do that
But
as
why
well.
is it blue?
Exactly.
And-
Bad
and
choice.
And I think that doing that, even if it's semester, first and third quarters, getting that to all of our patrons, getting a mailing list and pushing that stuff out, because people have just lost that connection, and if they don't have a connection, they're not gonna want to give any extra dollars.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's hard to lose sight that our school, I mean, it's a vital part of our community's success, and if our community doesn't believe in it, then we're not gonna be able to do all these wonderful things for our kids. So we just need to reestablish these really, really important connections with our patrons, with our seniors, with, the people who can attend things and can afford to attend things and things like that.
Exactly. I mean, because
So-
I can remember talking to this one group one time when we were talking about the auditorium, and they saw the ticket, the sticker price, $17,000 for that bond. And they said, my kids are gone, you know, why would I want to raise my taxes to support something that my kids aren't even taking advantage of? And I pointed out the fact and found out, just through a discussion with them, that they had kids that were active in music and, you know, and so, yeah, but they would have loved to have had an auditorium. They performed in this, you know, which was not a great performing setting. And talking them through that, you know, this is what your kids didn't have. This is an opportunity to give kids to have that. And then hearing that, as opposed to trying to convince them through printings and that,
Right.
was huge and swung them.
Yep. So I think that ties into, I know it ties into my long-term vision. But, so yeah, thank you for that, because I do believe that the more we can reconnect with the community in any way is really important, so. Does
One
anyone
more
else have
thing.
anything?
Yeah, thinking about our goals, I remember a number of meetings ago, we talked about when the principals gave their reports, how they could intertwine the goals with when they're reporting. Does anybody remember this?
We did talk about that.
And-
About it, one of the,
I don't remember where we were.
when we had our retreat over the summer.
Maybe, just so that we would have some more information from them and how they were meeting the goals. So I wanted to know if anybody remembers that conversation, and if that's something that we can ask some of the building leaders to let us know. You know, they do a great job about telling us about family nights, and all of those things are incorporated, but maybe if there's a class that did something special that we can use as a part of our information that we receive would be great.
Can you communicate that out?
Yep, we can do that.
You don't want to trust me to
Yeah,
do
because
it.
I do remember us talking about that, because I talked about when Greer was, you know, when I was board president, I had her kind of bring out some of the things that were going on in the buildings that were based on,
Isn't
not
that-
necessarily the goal, but just activity. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Isn't that kind of what happens when we go to each of the schools and they sort of give us an overall report? That would be a perfect time to hear, so we're not hearing it every single time from every single school, but we highlight each school.
Yeah, I mean, we do hear that from their site council when they share with us, but I know parents have said that some of them didn't realize we did goal setting meetings, and so if we have more parents that are listening and watching our school board meetings, then they might be able to start getting familiar with what our actual goals are and what their students are doing monthly, than just hearing it when we go and their site council is presenting.
And if it's something we think we can implement, I can always,
We can do that.
get
We can
down
make
to
as
that
part of our
part, I can
conversation,
make
yeah.
a,
It
say
won't be
something
the
about
focus.
that.
The focus will still be, here's all the good things that are happening. One of our board goals and this is one of the ways we are addressing that, how it filters down. That's a quick conversation we can include in our administrative reports, absolutely.
Okay.
We can do
Okay.
that.
All right, that sounds good. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the whole? All right, I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Lauren, second by Jason, all in favor?
Renee's hand is up.
Renee's hand is up, 7-0. We'll see you later.